Injuries can be the bane of many footballers' lives, just as they can be for athletes in virtually every sport. For someone like Ronaldo Luis Nazario de Lima, injuries deprived us of one of the most exhilarating footballers to have ever lived for around 2 years and prevented the Brazilian from rivaling the likes of Pelé and Maradona as the greatest player to have ever lived. For others, such as Just Fontaine or Marco van Basten, injuries forced them to curtail their careers much earlier than they would have liked, and for many thousands more, injuries can end promising academy players' careers before they even reach the professional game. Today's video is a look at a handful of current players who are seemingly never fit, so there'll be no retirees like Owen Hargreaves, Abu Diaby, or Jamie Redknapp. To be honest with you, I started making a shortlist of players who in my mind seem to forever be injured, and I'd come up with about 25 players in 10 minutes, and I could have come up with 25 more. So yes, it is very probable that I won't mention the first player you think of in terms of being perennially injured. Just as some examples, former QPR midfielder Alejandro Forlán suffered 3 ACL injuries in just 3 seasons, once promising Dutch international Ibrahim Afellay has made just 10 appearances in all competitions over the last 3 years. Meanwhile, Thomas Vermaelen has sustained an incredible 25 injuries, which have been serious enough to mean that he has missed games over the course of his career, and he's missed more matches through injury than he has played in over the last decade. None of those players feature in my 7, so as you can see, I had plenty of options. Without further ado then, here are 7 footballers who seem to be permanently injured. Daniel Sturridge. Daniel Sturridge is a man who has a special relationship with the physiotherapy department at every club he joins. The Englishman's repeated injury struggles are a crying shame, since Sturridge is immensely talented and showed in the 2013-14 season what he is capable of when he can stay fit for an extended period of time. Sturridge scored 24 goals in 33 games that season, operating superbly in tandem with Raheem Sterling and Luis Suarez, but he has been unable to build on that campaign, in which he was the division's second highest scorer. Sturridge's worst injuries have been to his hip, one in 2007 when he was just 17, and one in 2015. The latter of the 2 injuries required an operation in the United States and sidelined Sturridge for almost 6 months, but for the most part, it has been a tale of repeated niggling injuries that have stopped him from developing any kind of rhythm and form or from ever reaching full match fitness. In total, Sturridge has missed just under 800 days, or just over 2 years worth of football, through injuries. But as I said, due to the nature of his repeated setbacks, it's not as though he's suffered 1 or 2 really lengthy layoffs and then returned. He hasn't really played consistent first-team football in the best part of a decade. Sturridge is currently out of action, not through injury, but through a 4-month worldwide gambling-related ban from the sport, and it remains to be seen which club he will join ahead of next season. Winston Reid. No one does permanently injured quite like West Ham, and I can't give you any assurances that there aren't going to be more Hammers or former Hammers in this 7. Unlike some of the players in this 7, Winston Reid hasn't been plagued by injuries throughout his entire career, but he has had a pretty miserable time of things for a good while now. In more than 2 years now, Reid has only registered 2 competitive appearances, both of which came on loan as Sporting Kansas City in the MLS. It was in the 2016-17 season that Reid began to pick up the odd knock here and there, ruling him out for anywhere from a week to a month, but the following season he suffered a much more serious setback. On his return to action following a groin strain in March 2018 against Swansea City, Reid had to be stretchered off the pitch on oxygen. It turned out that he had twisted his knee, ruling him out for close to a year and a half. Reid returned to training for pre-season ahead of the start of last season, and he appeared in 2 pre-season friendly games. Unfortunately, just before the season began, Reid injured his knee again, ruling him out for another 3 months. He joined MLS side Sporting Kansas City on loan in February, and it seems unlikely that he'll play again in the Premier League. Fernando Gago. An inclusion in my recent video looking at 7 current players who I think could make for talented managers one day, Fernando Gago has had a horrible time with injuries for more than a decade. It was during the 2008-09 campaign, which was Gago's 3rd season at Real Madrid, that he started regularly being struck down by injuries. Following 18 months of frequent setbacks, by the time Gago returned to full fitness, he found himself out in the cold due to Jose Mourinho's preferred midfield partnership of Xabi Alonso and Sami Khedira. Moves to Roma and Valencia followed, with Gago managing a full season on loan in Italy, but finding himself sidelined for much of his season back in Spain, before waving goodbye to Europe in a return to Boca Juniors. Gago spent 7 seasons with Boca, where he was beset by injuries. Within the space of just 5 years, the Argentine international suffered 3 Achilles tendon tears and a ruptured ACL before going under the knife to try and fix his knee injury that had been ailing him for many years. In total, during his 7 years back at Boca, Gago only managed to make 118 appearances, an average of just 16.8 games a season, and that was in all competitions. He only managed to average 12 games in the league each season. It's a crying shame because Gago is a real class act at his best and a deep-line playmaker with enormous potential. Now aged 34, he joined Vélez Sarsfield in 2019, but he is yet to recover from the knee surgery which he underwent earlier this year. Andy Carroll. I warned you of a West Ham theme in this video, and it might not surprise you to find out that we're still not done with the Hammers just yet. Andy Carroll has only actually played 2 full seasons of football during his entire career, the 2009-10 campaign, in which he won promotion from the Championship with Newcastle, and the 2011-12 campaign, which was his first and last full season with Liverpool. Carroll famously set the Reds back £35 million, an eye-watering sum at the time, and although that was always an outrageous fee, Carroll was at one time a very effective player for a team that played to his strengths. On the rare occasions in which he was fit up until the last couple of years, Carroll was among the most dangerous aerial threats in the Premier League, and without injuries, he was someone who could easily have hit double figures in the top flight every season. Sadly, Carroll has rarely gone long without any injuries. Since his 2012 move to West Ham, Carroll has been absolutely plagued by injuries. He has suffered about 3 knee injuries, 5 ankle injuries, repeated ligament damage, and more muscle injuries than anyone has the ability to count. In total, Carroll had 8 injuries, which ruled him out for more than 100 days during his time with the Hammers, including one which left him sidelined for more than 200 days. It's a horrific record, and sadly, one which has continued for the former England international since returning to his boyhood club Newcastle United in 2019. Jan Kirchhoff. 6 years ago, Jan Kirchhoff was a star of the German under-21 squad who had just registered double figures in terms of appearances for Bayern Munich in a quadruple winning season under Pep Guardiola. Things were looking pretty good for the towering, gifted and versatile young German who subsequently spent a season on loan at Schalke. In truth, Kirchhoff had been plagued by injuries since his teens, but his promise was such that Bayern Munich, Schalke and later Premier League side Sunderland were all willing to take a risk on him. Kirchhoff was actually a rare bright spark for Sunderland when he played for the Black Cats during a pretty turgid couple of seasons. The problem was that he was only fit enough to make 22 league appearances across those 2 seasons. Kirchhoff swapped one circus for another in 2017 when he signed for Bolton Wanderers, but his injury problems persisted. Whilst it was his Achilles which had interrupted most of his early years, Kirchhoff's most significant setback during his time in England was a rupture of his outer meniscus. That injury ruled him out for about 6 months, and in 2019, Kirchhoff returned to Germany with Magdeburg in the 3rd Liga. Repeated muscle injuries restricted him to 10 games in 12 months before signing for divisional rivals Erdingen, where he managed to play 21 games last season. Kirchhoff was still injured for around half a season, again due largely to muscle damage. Ousmane Dembele. The most high-profile player in this 7, I suppose, given that he is the 6th most expensive footballer of all time, Ousmane Dembele is one of only 8 men to have been signed for more than €100 million in the entire history of the sport. That transfer came from Borussia Dortmund to Barcelona in 2017, and in fairness to the La Liga side, Dembele hadn't really had any significant injury problems prior to the move. In truth, Dembele has played more football than anyone else in this 7 over the last few years, but a bit like Champions League final hero Kingsley Coman, the fact he is such a big name means that his injury problems tend to be more well documented, given the impression that he is injured as much as someone like Andy Carroll or Daniel Sturridge. Having said that, Dembele has had pretty rotten luck since arriving in Catalonia, suffering 1 medium-term injury, 2 less severe ones, and 1 really nasty one. The first injury, which ruled the Frenchman out for 4 months, was a hamstring injury during his first league start. On his return to action, Dembele tweaked another muscle, putting him out of action for a month, but he did manage to get through most of the 2018-19 campaign unscathed. Unfortunately, in the opening game of last season, Dembele suffered another hamstring injury, and in February, he suffered his 3rd and by far his worst injury to his hamstring, ruling him out for 6 months. Jack Wilshere. If you're an English football fan, when you think of injuries, Jack Wilshere is most likely the first name that enters your head. Once heralded as the gifted and creative ball-carrying midfielder that England had been crying out for so long, Wilshere emerged from Arsenal's youth ranks as a superb technician who was very easy on the eye. He quickly set about realising his potential before hitting a major stumbling block in the 2011-12 season. Wilshere suffered 4 significant injuries in a single campaign, and combined, they prevented him from registering a single appearance that season, despite having been a regular for the Gunners the year before. Over the next 2 seasons, Wilshere only suffered minor setbacks, which disrupted his ability to gather momentum rather than preventing him from playing at all. But another big injury arrived right at the start of the 2015-16 campaign. During pre-season, the Englishman broke his fibula, and doctors soon identified a hairline fracture to his calf bone, which required surgery. Wilshere made just 3 appearances all season, and at the end of a season in which he finally managed to regain some fitness on loan at Bournemouth, disaster struck once again. It was another hairline fracture to his fibula, and it meant another 4 months on the sidelines. Arsenal let Wilshere join his boyhood club West Ham in 2018, but if anything, his luck has been even more out at the London Stadium. 2 injuries to his ankle and 1 to his groin have limited Wilshere to only 16 Premier League appearances in 2 seasons, coming as particular disappointment to West Ham fans last season off the back of a really promising pre-season. So that is it for today's video. Thank you all as ever for watching. Please do hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and make sure that you are subscribed to HITC Sevens. Oh, and if you'd like to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, the username, as most of you will be aware, is just HITC Sevens on both platforms.